What if your world is not the way you think your world is? What I mean by that is, what if that there's a missing piece to the global order of things, whereas you get parts, but the reason why it doesn't quite make sense, the reason why it seems that the world is off its goddamn rocker, that the reason why your government's spending gobs of money is that there's a piece missing that you have just been kept away from. Richard Dolan, this gentleman here, he's a historian. He makes the argument, and to some degree convincingly, but it's hard to know to what degree because at this point you're just dealing in the shadows. But he makes the argument that history that we've been given is only a version of history, and that there's an offshoot, a potential offshoot, that we have been kept completely in the dark on. And he calls this a secret space program. That NASA is using antiquated technology. It's to some degree a dog and pony show. The people who are working there are probably earnest and hardworking people, but that there's more to it. Okay, that didn't flip over. All right, this guy. He's a historian by trade. He ends up into the UFO community almost by accident when he's seeing information in the historical text that goes towards this idea of, oh my God, what if the version of the world that we got is not the full and absolute truth of the matter? Let's have a 420. Now, this show is not going to delve fully into the secret space program, but I need to give an explanation on what that means before going into the secondary part of the show, so I'll try to make this quick. And yeah, this is a 420, so blaze one if you got one. Forgive me for my sobriety on this. I've tried my best. If you run into a guy who's has sunglasses in Portugal and he offers you his shisha pot, walk the other way. It's dirt weed. Don't buy it. Before you dismiss this notion out of hand, consider for the moment that it would only take a quirk of technology that researchers or governmental sources or private industry would get that could dramatically affect, or if we, from our perspective, not knowing what this is, may look like magic. Now, we know that the government was studying UFO items. This idea that it's only been studying for 1 year is nonsense. You can go back to the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and see that the United States government was studying these things and using disinformation, ridicule, the techniques to try to make people not look in a particular direction that is the most natural direction in the world to look. We, with our basic understanding of physics and with our rudimentary technology, sent people into a craft onto the moon. Tin can, floating in a most peculiar way. We did that with the most basic of technology. And yes, I understand that the drive to some degree was a militaristic drive, but we did it nonetheless. That speech with Kennedy, defiant, we'll go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it was hard. This would test the best of our abilities. That is an amazing speech for a man to make. It is a breathtaking speech. And yes, I get excited when I think about that speech, because that is a man, a president, saying that we're going to organize our powers and our abilities to send us to the goddamn moon. We're going to beat the Soviets there. This is freedom and justice. Yes, he's coding it in Cold War terms, but we did it nonetheless. But pretend for the moment, assume for the moment, disabuse yourself of this notion of wanting to ignore this and say, what if there was actual technology that the United States government had in procurement of maybe a craft, maybe something that was down, maybe scientists broke it on their own, maybe it was an understanding of gravity that didn't necessarily seep into the public consciousness. If they've been studying that for the past 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, what would that look like from the standpoint of us? Would it not look like magic if we don't necessarily understand the physical principles? And even though we may not understand the physical principles, if it would explain to us, maybe we would understand it. But what would it look like? What would the companies that have been using this, what would the governmental enclosures, if you have this kind of thing where it's sectioned off, where certain people know about it but other people don't, what would that reality look like to the group, to the small cadre of people that is let in on that secret, that knows that secret, that is using the technology, that maybe even building craft with that technology? What would it look like? And is it possible, to any degree that's possible, that with a quirk of technology, that the United States, has been using it for a secret space program? Paul Hellyer of Canada says that the United States' technology that it's, for the most part, has been hoarding. He would know. You have other whistleblowers, all sorts of military and private industry whistleblowers that has come out saying that we have been studying this stuff. People who worked for NASA saying that we've been scrubbing certain information about the way that the space looks and all this other stuff. Is it possible to any degree that's possible? Richard Dolan makes that case. And I suggest you look up Richard Dolan if you want to hear more about the details and specifics of his argument that he makes here. But it is a fascinating case, and it is a fascinating idea to think of. Do you believe that history that has been presented to you is exactly the way the history is? Of course, it's nonsense. I mean, you have situations where the CIA alone have been taking down governments and has been creating coups and fomenting revolutions and all this stuff that's kept off the books, that if you ask people about it, they would say, we have no idea who did it, even though they know that the CIA, to some degree, did it. The question becomes whether or not the president ordered it. We have no idea the level of secrecy that's involved in this. It's possible that the president alone has been given, just through executive order, shutting everybody up on this, meaning that there's silence and secrecy surrounding this particular UFO issue, but this issue is being brought further and further into the limelight. How far back does this go? And if this has been something that's been studied, going back to the 40s and the 50s, we've been using private enterprise to keep this information. And if you try to use a FOIA, you may run up against the fact that this stuff is compartmentalized using private industry to essentially hide various aspects of technology. What would that society look like? Richard Dolan makes the argument that this may be a breakaway civilization, that this small body of people in military may have broken away and is living a fundamentally different reality from the reality that we ourselves live, with NASA flying up candlesticks. If they even just broke this idea of gravity and is able to use gravity in a particular way, for all we know, there's certain ideas of consciousness that may play into this. There's all sorts of stuff that you can think of that may play into this. But if you disabuse yourself for the moment in this 420, the rule of the 420 is that you don't necessarily fully reject the ideas. You just soak in the idea for the moment. Experience it as it is. In this case, there's nothing to necessarily completely disprove this, while agreeably, I agree with you that this will be in the shadows. Here's the catch. The catch is not necessarily whether you fully believe this or not. The story is not necessarily dependent upon whether you believe this or not. I'm putting this out there to say that there are learned people who are historians who look into this, who have hit their head on this and asked this question of, is there a secret space program that we are completely unaware about? Richard Dolan is a serious researcher. I like him. I would love to have him on my show. Enter somebody who's not a serious researcher, Goode. Personally, I think Corey Goode is a lunatic. But that's my own personal perspective of Corey Goode. Corey Goode, and just I'll let Corey Goode explain Corey Goode himself. This is Corey Goode's website. It's Fear Being Alliance. This is Corey Goode's own words about Corey Goode. Identified as an intuitive empath, Corey Goode was recruited in one of the MyLabs, that's military abductions, programs at the young age of 6. MyLab is a term coined for military abductions of a person that indoctrinates and trains them for any number of military black op programs. Goode trained and served in MyLab program from 1976 to 1986 and 87. Toward the end of his time in MyLabs, he was assigned to fill an IE support role for rotating Earth delegate seat shared by secret Earth government groups in a human-type ET Super Federation Council. These are his own words. This is not me making this up. Goode's IE abilities played an important role in communicating with, interfacing with non-terrestrial beings as part of the Secret Space Program, SSP. During his 20-year service, he had a variety of experiencing and assignments, including the Intruder Intercept Interrogation Program assignment to the ASSR, Auxiliary Specialized Space Research, and SRB Interstellar Class Vessel, and much more. This all occurred in the 20 and back agreement from 1986-87 to 2007, with recall work continuing to the present day. He recalled this one day. He just recalled it. Goode now works in the information technology and communications industry with 20 years experience in hardware, software, visualization, physical activity, right. Goode continues his IE work now and remains in direct physical contact with the Blue Avians of the Fear Being Alliance, who have chosen him as a delegate to interface with multiple ET federations and councils on behalf, liaison with the SSP Alliance Council, and deliver important messages to humanity. Blue Avians, a bird race of ETs. He recalled this all of a sudden. Personally, I think Goode is a lunatic or a con artist. That's my own personal opinion. You can look up some more of the stuff that Goode has said or that he's put forth. None of it is provable. All of it is stuff that he recalled one day. Now, it is natural as natural can be for a man to look up into the stars and say, am I alone? It is natural as natural can be to wonder, is something, looking back, is this a dead cosmos that will not weep one iota if we blink out of existence? Or is that man that's looking up with his consciousness, looking up at the stars, is there some consciousness looking back? That's a good question. I see nothing wrong with that question at all. I see that question to be as natural can be. But if you're telling me that there's a bird race of ETs and that you're some kind of delegate that's been chosen, I need a little bit more than that. Goode has taken to try to trademark Secret Space Program and SSP. He wants to trademark the words. There were other words, but those specific words he wanted to get a trademark for. Now, the first time I ever heard SSP and Secret Space Program was under Richard Dolan. And like I said, Richard Dolan was a serious researcher. Richard Dolan was a historian that kind of hit his head on there's a missing piece to history and there's a certain amount of conjecture. Now, Richard Dolan doesn't know this as a flat fact. He doesn't say this as a flat fact. He put this out there as this is potentially history that we're missing. Goode, looking at this as some kind of business opportunity, went with the idea of trying to trademark these terms: Secret Space Program and SSP. He goes so far with this that he sends a legal letter from his lawyer attacking a guy who said that that person had experiences in the Secret Space Program. Now, to explain this gets a little in the weeds. And I gotta be honest, this is a bit much for me. There's a gentleman who says he has experiences with the secret space program. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. I can't say that this guy is lying. I can't say that this guy is making it up. So I won't say that. But there's an order of magnitude of belief that's associated with this, which makes this mind-blowing, which is why this is being used in the context of a 420. One gentleman said he had experiences within this context of a secret space program. Goode gets mad and sends a dirty letter to him from his lawyers telling him to cease and desist because this term of secret space program, the words, are being trademarked, and SSP particularly is also being trademarked. Now this is amazing. Richard Dolan makes the best argument here, saying that look, if you believe that this is real, which Richard Dolan believes that it's real, then this is a matter of history. This is not a matter of something to be trademarked. It would be like trying to trademark NASA going to the moon. I mean, it's a bit weird. It's like saying I'm going to trademark Columbus finding America. It's historical record. This is not, a brand of Cheerios. This is not Harry Potter. This is not some level of fiction. At the very least, in the context that this is being used, this is not a level of fiction. At least they're not talking about it as fiction. Otherwise, what's the fucking point? So the idea of trying to trademark words pertaining to history is bizarre, to say the least. But this is what's taken place. And this created a large argument in this particular community. I was unaware about Jeff Kuntz turned me on to this, so I'm doing this video because there's an update to this that I'm going to talk about at the end. So, and I don't know who may be even interested in this. This is like, this is in the fucking weeds from the standpoint of the UFO community, but this created an uproar in the community because he was trying to trademark these words. And it's trademark them to what end? Are you saying that other people can't use the term secret space program to describe something that's supposedly a real thing? Imagine somebody, NASA going to the moon, and somebody says, I'm going to trademark that. Columbus discovering America, quote unquote. I'm going to trademark that. The United States passing Obamacare. I'm going to trademark Obamacare. Trademarking aspects of history just sounds utterly absurd. How are you going to stop people from talking about aspects of history, aspects of historical record? Which again, if that's not what we're talking about, then what's the point? If this is within the context of something like Harry Potter, and this is a level of fiction, okay. But this is not used within the context of fiction. This is supposedly something that's potentially real. In which case, the idea of trademarking something that's real sounds a bit loony. Let's read this letter. This was a letter that was sent to a guy from the attorney of Corey Goode. It has come to my attention that you have been using the term belonging to my client. He believes the secret space program belongs to his client. The first time I heard about this was Richard Dolan. If anything, it belongs to Richard Dolan. But whatever. It has come to my attention that you have been using the term secret space program belonging to my client, James Corey Goode, in various online and possibly otherwise broadcasts. You may not be aware that Mr. Goode owns certain common law rights. No, he doesn't. And pending federal trademark rights in phrases SSP and 20 and back. He doesn't. It's nonsense. It doesn't exist. He doesn't own anything. This is nonsense. And pending federal trademark rights, pending, that you will never get. And the phrases SSP and 20 and back. This letter is to inform you of those rights and to apprise you that if you are to further participate in the broadcast or publication of materials using these terms, you are in violation of Mr. Goode's copyright, trademark rights, and other existing IP rights, and that Mr. Goode will take any necessary precautions to protect those rights. Good luck. Do that. Good luck. You'll be laughed out of court. This is nonsense. To be completely clear, this letter is to firmly request that you refrain from, you can firmly request all you want, go kick rocks, Any use, distribution, production, sale, advertising of his work, it's not his work, related to the testimony regarding the secret space program. Here's the thing, the person who was talking about it was talking about his own experiences associated with the secret space program. Now, whether you believe those experiences are real or not is somewhat secondary to whether or not an individual can copyright those words or trademark those words. If we're talking about real history, how are you trademarking real history and the words that are used to describe real history? If this is make-believe, that's a different matter. But this is not used within the context of make-believe. This is used within the context of what people are saying is potentially history. I hope that makes sense. Any use, distribution, production, sale, or advertising of his work related to his testimony regarding the secret space program. Sphere Being Alliance, Blue Avians, 20 and Back, Return of the Guardians, Dark Fleet, and countless other topics, areas of interest, and any use whatsoever of Goode's testimony, story, or materials that authorize Goode. I am sure you appreciate the gravity of the situation. Yes, I do. There's very little gravity. Gravity is the weakest of the forces. It only really comes into account when there's massive objects at work. And you can, like the sun, the moon, or something like that, that kind of creates a certain degree of disruption of space, time. But under normal circumstances, gravity is the weakest of forces. Physicists wonder why gravity is so weak, but that's kind of besides the point. No, I don't appreciate the gravity of this situation because this is nonsense. You have no right to those words. You have no right to those trademark terms. And the idea that you're going to try to trademark it makes you look utterly ridiculous. And this has created a rift. And it's not even a rift. Most sane people look at this and say, this guy's a lunatic. Please let me know at your earliest convenience your intention to comply with the foregoing. He's not going to comply. If you have any questions, I am free to discuss. We appreciate your cooperation in this matter. He sends a dirty letter to try to threaten the guy to stop using the term secret space program. The update on this story is that there was so much pushback, so much ridicule, so much going after him throughout the UFO community, particularly among Richard Dolan, because Richard Dolan's argument was the strongest to me. How, if this is indeed history and not make-believe, meaning if you try to trademark Harry Potter, fair enough, it's a work of fiction, it's a work of magnificent fiction. But this, the Blue Avian stuff, feel free. Trademark that all you want. But you can't trademark the term secret space program if it's an artifact of history. Not to mention, you don't own that term. You didn't even originate that term. And this is a certain degree of an appropriation that is amazing and breathtaking. Hubris. Fast forward, after all of the ridicule, he no longer is trying to trademark those terms. That was the last bit of detail that was associated with this. I keep you guys up to date with stuff that takes place in the UFO community because I tried to keep my finger on the pulse. I don't necessarily agree with all the stuff that takes place. I don't even believe all the stuff that takes place. Usually I'm in this zone of not believe or disbelieve, or not believe or believe, not believe or disbelieve. I just kind of sit on the fence and nothingness, if this makes sense. Just like the bomb thing. It's like, who was responsible for the bombs? And people were making conjecture. I had no conjecture. I just said, this is what it might be, this is what it might be. I have no idea. Same thing with this. If a person came to me and a person said, I had an experience of XYZ, I wouldn't just discount the belief. I have to look at the individual and make a judgment on whether or not I think that person is credible. I don't think Corey Goode is credible. So the stuff that he comes out with, I think, is lunacy. To some degree, I even think it does a disservice to the UFO community for Corey Goode to be a part of the UFO community, if that makes sense. Richard Dolan is a serious guy. I think he's earnest. I have had bizarre experiences, and those bizarre experiences gives me to a point of being able to see the next stone of maybe. So I don't discount each and everything that comes up that's beyond my typical range of experience. But you need to have a filter. You need to have a filter. This video is not about a filter or anything else. This video has more to do with what's been taking place from the standpoint of the UFO community, particularly in regards to this particular issue. Since this was such an uproar and since people were arguing over this, I figured I'd do a video on this and give an update. The update being Corey Goode has come to his senses, at least in this case, and has stopped trying to have a trademark on the English language. I don't know who's here, and I don't even know who cares about this, but let's take a look. How many people? What is this? 29. That sounds about right. Did Jamarl read out this Corey job description as interfacing with aliens? In my book, Interface into a Captain Kirk. No, the reason why I read out Corey Goode's stuff is because I wanted his own words to describe him, so you know the quality of the person that you're dealing with. That's why I read that out. This was a fight in the UFO sandbox. And to some degree, you can make an argument that this fight at this point is over with, since he relented. I'll leave this here. I don't think anybody's going to be interested in this particular story. But I looked at this and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? That was my first thought. Are you fucking kidding me? How are you trying to trademark words, like 3 words? And it's not even 3 words related to like him writing a book or something. It's 3 words that are descriptive of something. It's just utterly bizarre. But I wanted to read out his own description of himself. I didn't want to make anything up. I wanted to read out his own description of himself. Personally, again, I think he's either a lunatic or he's making shit up. But that's my thoughts. I don't know that as a flat fact. Nevertheless, you make your own judgments on this. But everything else to the side, the idea that you can try to trademark this is nonsense. It's nonsense. High stakes in a gravity-less world makes for interesting situations. I love our gravity-less world. At the very least, drama. A bunch of soap opera stuff. So, I'll leave this here. And I'll cut the video so it's not, all trademarks are nonsense. That's a whole different conversation. I know where you're coming from. That's a different conversation. I mean, that gets into this idea of property and all this other stuff. But I feel you. All right, I'll end this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. Thanks all.